Clifford, Kevin, thanks again for joining me with this podcast. Clifford and I, we both were software engineers at LinkedIn, and we both didn't have a college degree.
I got an associate's, but it was completely unrelated to. It was like social and behavioral science, nothing to do with computers.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah.
When did you start programming, or when did you start learning?
I started learning a program during the time I was at community college, and I was going to transfer to a 4-year, finish the 4-year degree, but in the middle of all that, I discovered programming, so things took a different take.
Yeah, I guess what we could start off with is kind of how we both became software engineers, and I could go ahead and start first. As you may know, that I went through the Year Up program, and I really suck at elevator pitches, but the Year Up program is pretty much for underprivileged kids from 18 to 25 to join this program, and within a year they learn soft skills, hard skills about information technology, which is pretty much IT, fixing computers, dealing with customers and things like that. And through the program, I received my internship at LinkedIn.
What's LinkedIn for people who have no idea? Or do you think everybody knows what LinkedIn is? Because some people might be like, Indeed, LinkedIn, like the same thing. Because I've had people tell me like, oh, I thought they're the same thing.
I would say it's a social networking website.
It's a social network focused on professional life and work life. It has a news feed like Facebook messages. Like it looks like Facebook, but more refined for professionals. Yeah.
Man, I was working there for 6.5 years and I couldn't explain it very well. But anyway, so I got my internship at LinkedIn, and what I was doing mobile telecommunication, which is pretty much I would help employees install MDM software, and those MDM software to download and receive email. It was very secure, and my day-to-day was pretty much just like helping customers just download software. Since my internship was only gonna last 6 months, I kind of thought to myself, I feel like I could do much more than this. And I met someone, her name was Flo, and she was a web developer at LinkedIn. And I went up to her desk because I was fixing her phone, and I saw her that she was writing code, and I didn't know what she was really doing, and it just looked really intriguing. So I kind of asked her like, hey, I'm here for 6 months. I'm doing this internship, but this coding stuff looks really, really cool. I was wondering if you could teach me how to code. And for whatever reason, she was like really excited to have this young kid. At the time I was 20 years old, to have this young kid come in here and learn about how to code. So she would actually devote her time from like 6 a.m. till 9 a.m. when I started my internship to teach me how to code. And through her, I met more engineers, and it got to a point where I was going to these engineering meetings without having any context. I was just a kid who just wanted to sit into meetings to learn about like what kind of products they're building. Got to a point where the director of web development kind of knew about me and found out about like, hey, there's this kid who's like learning how to code, and he gave me a shot for an interview to be part of like the software engineering team. And at the time, dude, I didn't answer any questions correctly. Like he would ask me something simple like, all right, create a add class function. And at that point, I was just learning like CSS. So I thought he meant just put like a class equals and then class name onto like some sort of element. And he wanted me to write the function in JavaScript, and I totally blew it. It was weird because a week later after the interview, I got a call saying that like, even though you may not be ready for an engineering position, we see a lot of potential in you and we want to hire you full time. And that's kind of how I got my start. Pretty crazy. LinkedIn decided to hire someone who didn't know how to code, and that's kind of how I got my start. And I was there for 6.5 years, went through multiple promotion. And this is me without any college degree or not even having any context of coding, but I think like the hard work and determination that you could show would really put you out there to be in a good position. And Clifford, you've interviewed candidates for LinkedIn.
Yeah, that was part of the LinkedIn culture, right?
Yeah,
just
everybody
interviewing people on a constant basis. Yeah,
and it's crazy because here I am at 20 years old. I started interviewing candidates to join LinkedIn when I was around 21. So I was working at LinkedIn for about a year, and like I was interviewing people who who went to Berkeley, who went to Stanford, who went to, Cal Poly. Some of them even have master's degrees. And I knew like more stuff than they did. And, that kind of put me in perspective. Like, is a college degree needed to become a good software engineer? That's why we're doing this podcast. Maybe you could talk about your story and how you got into Salesforce, because Salesforce was your first engineering job, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you could just kind of discuss how you got there.
So is it okay if I kind of do a brief breakdown of how I started learning to code, and then take it from there? So
let's do it.
It happening during community college, and most people in school, whether that's high school or college, you get a few weeks off during December near the end of the year, right? The end of the year break. And I remember during the end of the year break, or maybe it was Thanksgiving, I don't remember, the week-long break, I had some free time. I had my computer, and somehow, maybe, by chance, I don't know, I stumbled upon the website codecademy.com.
Oh, yeah, I remember Codecademy.
And then I was like, learn how to code in your web browser. I was like, what is this? Okay. And then I remember I did the HTML and CSS tutorial, and when I made like a blue box or something show up on the screen, and I made an alert box show up in my web browser, I was like, damn, I did that. Like, I could instruct my computer to do these things. That got me hooked. So during that break that I had, I just kept learning. And then I noticed that I was dedicating a lot of time to this, and I would sit down for hours and then look at my watch, and I'm like, whoa, 5 hours passed by. I was struggling through these concepts, but I'm still liking it. I'm still enjoying it. There's something here. After that happened a few times where I noticed time was just flying. I was still passionate about it, even though it was challenging and hard. I took that as a signal that I had found something that I really liked. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important for other people to realize, is maybe there's something that you're doing a lot and you see time pass by with it. Maybe that's a sign. That that's something that you like and you have a good aptitude for. So I took that as a signal. I'm going to keep learning how to code. So I kept doing that while I was still in community college. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was planning on going to a 4-year, transferring after my general education of 2 years at community college. I thought maybe I should switch my major to computer science. Mm-hmm. I did consider it. And I tried to take my first programming class at City College. This is just my story and perspective, not to bash on their courses or anything, but I saw Java and I was like, this is not what I want to do. This looks scary. This looks not like what I saw, which was front end at the time, front end programming, front end web development. And at the time I didn't know that, there's different areas of programming, like front end, back end, data science. Mm-hmm. And I realized I like front end, but most colleges, they don't really have front end curriculums. Yeah. It's kind of just very scattered. You might see a class on building a website or a web app, or mm-hmm. I don't know, intro to web something. But I was like, that's not for me. I think I could just do fine with Code Academy for now. Yeah. And then later I found Team Treehouse, which is a learn to code website. And if you're actually in the San Francisco area or anywhere in the Bay Area, a lot of these libraries have free memberships to Team Treehouse. I didn't know that until recently. Yeah. And but if that isn't the case, it's pretty affordable still, $20 a month for a mm-hmm. super high quality library of content that's all nicely curated, and there's a nice path, because when you're learning, there's too much information out there in the world, and people forget that there's a lot of mental effort that goes on into curating information. Mm-hmm. You don't have that experience yet to know if this is good or not, or if you're repeating, or if you're overthinking things. And just to keep going along the path, I was learning on my own while I was in community college. Then I was still curious about all this stuff, and reading blogs and stuff like that, I found about coding bootcamps. And coding bootcamps are these short, intensive software development schools that teach people how to just really accelerate, teach people how to learn how to be effective engineers in a short amount of time. And there's like different levels of boot camps. Some are like, I would call them 0 to 60 programs. You don't know how to code, will get you to like
60%.
60 or 70%, which is good. And then there's other programs that are more like 20 to 120, in that everybody has to come in at a certain level because you don't want to hold anybody behind. And it shows like you're serious. Like, you have to get to 20 before you start. If not, sorry. Like, but I went to one of those programs, which was Hack Reactor here in...
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know you went to Hack Reactor.
So there's an admissions process. I didn't get in like 3 times. And this was like in 2016 or 2015, where boot camps were getting popular, but they weren't as popular, and the resources for getting into one wasn't... You kind of just had to do it yourself. But now there's, fortunately, in 2019, now there's like specific pathways. Like, these boot camps are now saying, well, we know a lot of people want to learn how to code, and we're going to create like a nice pre-boot camp path to not shortcut, but like make their paths much smoother. Like, this is the stuff you need to know before you get in. So that's good. That I did that 3 months program.
Did you learn a lot from it?
I learned a lot from it. I think the value of a boot camp is, one, the environment. You're around with like 20 other people in your classroom who are highly motivated, who all have skin in the game. They're there because they want to be there. They put money down. They want to be software engineers. So classmates, peers, people have skin in the game. The curriculum, I think, is very good, and it's been like tested on like hundreds of times. So Hack Reactor right now has like 3,000 plus alumni, or even more. And by the time I did it in like 2016, there was at least like 1,000 plus alumni. So, and Hack Reactor has this model of every class they're trying to get better, so they take the feedback and incorporate it. So I was going through a curriculum that had been tested on by over 1,000 people. So, and again, like, you're saving time by you not having to think about all these different resources and how they tie in. What's like the most effective thing to learn right after this thing? So it's like a nice way to compound knowledge really quickly in a short amount of time. And you're learning hard stuff, but at least you're struggling in a supportive environment, and you're struggling with 20 other people who are just as excited to learn how to do it and become engineers. So like, you're learning stuff like recursion and a lot of other things. And I remember thinking I probably on my own probably would not have wanted to learn recursion. It just seems like one thing where it's like, when would I use it?
Yeah, I don't
type
think,
of thing.
I always hear recursions, but there's libraries that you can use to do recursion. So I
can't think of a time where I also had to create like a recursive function to solve a problem, because like you said, there's libraries. But the most common example of recursion that's practical, I think, and it's a common interview question, is you have like a list of items, and you know how arrays, you can have nested arrays inside of them. Like a common recursion question is, here's this list, there's more lists inside, flatten it completely. It's good to learn. Where was I going with this? So the boot camp, I was doing that. After I graduated, there's the job hunt process. That's like its own little journey in and of itself. Like, you're not going to be handed a job or anything like that. So I think I job hunted for like 2 months, 2.5 months. And I had interviews at like phone screenings and everything like that with some startups, Google, Electronic Arts. It was like 4 or 5 companies, but I easily applied to over 150 for sure.
But then how did you get those phone calls other than just applying? What was something that stuck out?
Well, I think one thing is, I don't think it was the boot camp. It helped me gain the knowledge that I needed, of course, to interview and present myself and talk in the language of programmers. But I didn't put on the boot camp, resume, my boot camp at all, because I just didn't feel like it was like it was gonna add too much value. I just wanted to be looked at as a candidate first and foremost.
Yeah.
And I think when I approached the job hunting process, I thought about how could I best position myself. So the mindset I had is I wanted to show them all the projects that I worked on my resume, and then I did put that I went to like City College, study social and behavioral science, whatever. But my like 95% of my resume was all engineering. Like I didn't put that I worked at Roundtable. I also did Europe like Richard too. I forgot to mention that. So I had like some IT experience, but completely unrelated to code. Like IT is not coding at all.
Yeah.
So I put that like I had internship IT. Super small part of my resume. Then I went to City College, but then the 95% of it was projects describing what I did. Because the impression I wanted to give them was, look, damn, okay, he's an engineer. Oh, and then at the bottom, cool, he's an engineer, and in some time ago in his past life, he happened to have studied psychology or sociology. That's cool, but he's an engineer, of course. That's the perspective that I wanted to keep pushing.
Yeah.
So
after you graduated, you were on the job hunt. Then I guess one of the places that you applied to was Salesforce. Right? And was that for front-end engineering as well?
I remember I applied to 2 jobs at Salesforce, and one of them, I didn't even realize I applied because Salesforce is a big company. Yeah. And I didn't know at the time when I applied, but I applied to like 2 different areas of the company. What I mean by that is Salesforce has like 2 parts, salesforce.com and then there's salesforce.org. So that's like their philanthropic arm, everything that has to do with technology and helping nonprofits and giving back. And I remember I applied to .com within like maybe a day. I got rejected, but then .org gave me a call back, and I thought that was interesting. How you can apply to a big company, but different areas of the company may consider you differently because obviously different people read the application and stuff like that. So, interestingly enough, I applied without any referrals or anything like that. And I remember whatchamacallit, when the manager got the application, I said, when they called me, they asked me stuff like, do you know anybody at the company? And I said, oh yeah, I think I know someone who works in this area. Her name is Raven. Yeah. And the manager was like, oh, you mean this Raven? I'm like, yeah, that Raven. And I guess that helped. And what I'm just trying to say is, your friends can help you like get your job because it just makes things more personal. Like there's a statistic that you've probably heard of things like this, where if you have a referral, your chances of getting hired somewhere is like much higher. For sure. Or if you know a friend. So I applied and they looked at my application, and because I had a friend there, that just brought more life to my application, I suppose. And I got started in front-end web development over there.
How long were you there for?
Probably a year and a half or a little over.
Kevin here, you got your degree in architecture.
So I went to Skyline College, to do all my GE stuff, but I also tried testing out a bunch of other majors. My family, they kind of, I wouldn't say forced me, but they encouraged me to just do architecture because my dad's a structural engineer. So I grew up like around all of that stuff. And then I went to City College. I decided like, all right, I'm tired of school. I was getting older. I think I was like already 21 or 22 when I was at City. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do architecture. Like, I just need to take a couple classes and then transfer out. And my last semester, so I applied to Berkeley. And Berkeley, they only accept transfer students for architecture in the fall. So my last spring semester at City, It was pretty chill because I was just waiting, to get accepted. And I took a bunch of CS classes because I was kind of like the IT guy at my house. I always fix computers and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, let's check out what this coding stuff is. I took the C++. You took the Java class, right? Yeah. So I took the C++. I was like, this is all right. It's cool. Then I started playing with Arduinos, and I was like, wow, this is even more cool because I could build like a combination of architecture and programming, like what do you call them now? Immersive spaces, like lights and all that. I was really into that. But I got accepted into Berkeley. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna finish architecture. Then I don't gotta look at it ever again. So I did that. I also took some CS classes at Berkeley, but it was...
Which ones? CS61A?
Yeah.
I took CS61A.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I actually went... So one part of the story that I didn't mention is I had started at community college. I went through a boot camp, but throughout that whole process, as I was a community college student, I was still completing my general education, and I did complete it. I applied to Berkeley. I also got in, but instead of going to Berkeley, I said, I'm going to do the boot camp instead. And it was kind of, it was hard because I had wanted to go to Berkeley for a long time, since high school. And then a lot of people knew, like people in my community knew that I was going to probably go to Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And then me kind of just saying I wasn't going to go for something like a boot camp, which trying to explain that to people,
no, they won't understand.
They don't understand.
Same with the Year Up. I try to explain what Year Up is. They just have no concept of what Year Up is or all these other vocational type education.
Yeah. One thing that you said which grabbed my attention was you said, okay, I got into Berkeley and I'll just finish this architecture stuff. And I kind of thought the same way, like, I got into Berkeley, I guess I could just finish what I started too. But some part of me was like, well, two things. I knew that the boot camp path was already kind of like proven. Like I'd seen enough people to know that this was a risk that would fall in my favor. So I was like, I can either spend 900 days of my life studying something I wasn't as passionate about anymore, or I could spend 900 days of my life, which is about, 360 times 2 is 720, never mind. About, oops. So I was thinking like 700 plus days of studying something I wasn't as passionate about, and then inside I would be dying to want to code, but it would be after I finished all my coursework. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is going to be the slowest 2 years of my life, I thought to myself. So I kind of like I mapped out my life. I was like, where would this Clifford be in 2 years? Where would this Clifford be in 2 years? The Clifford who went to Berkeley, he would get that nice degree, the prestige. Yeah. And, but he would be a sociology major, and if he had time, then he probably would pick up some small programming skills, but probably not likely. But this Clifford, who in 2 years after doing the boot camp, he might be a mid-level engineer. And I just took it from that perspective. And anyways, I took the boot camp path, and fortunately, things have turned out well. And I think computer programming is an interesting space, like business or art or entrepreneurship, where it's very creative and open. So for me, it kind of makes sense now that you don't really need a degree for it, because things change so fast. It's a very creative field that you can prove your ability and worth and all that other stuff with your experience. So
for sure.
Yeah.
And so Kevin and I, we typically like to rock climb, and one of the discussions that we have every time we rock climb is, should you get a college degree, or should you join this boot camp? But as of right now, you're just using Team Treehouse, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned Hack Reactor earlier. I took the pre-course.
How long is the pre-course? I don't remember. When I did it, it was like 4 weeks, and it was all in person. I don't know what it was like for you.
So they have the part-time and the full-time. The full-time's like 4 to 5 weeks, but it's literally full time, like 8 to 10 hours a day. And then the part time, it lasts longer, but it's part time. It's like I think I was doing like Monday through Thursday, 3 hours after work. Yeah, and so I applied once. I got rejected. They asked me just about like, oh, how do you turn like a number into a string? And like that, I just freaked out because it was like, I know it was an easy answer, like, but I just freaked out because I didn't know it at the time, and then I had to Google it, and I was just panicking because I'm like, fuck, I only got 30 minutes to do this. But yeah, so I failed that. And then like I worked for a bit because I needed to save up money. My car broke down, life stuff. And then eventually I got released from my job, and I was like, all right, it's time to go, full force into this coding thing because I have the time. I have a supported family, so I don't really have like an excuse right now. So yeah, ever since then, I've just been looking at Udemy. I love Team Treehouse right now. It's probably my number one. But yeah, it's just building projects, and then I'm kind of at the part where I'm like, fuck, should I apply? Because I know I got imposter syndrome right now, which is like a big thing people like to talk about in the tech world.
Oh, you should talk about imposter syndrome because
I still have
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So, dude, I've been an engineer for almost 7 years now, and I'm waiting for the time, like, oh man, they're gonna find out that I'm just sneaking through, taking their money. Like, when are they gonna find out that I'm freaking fake? When I was working at LinkedIn, or even when I was at Keep Truckin', which is a startup that I joined. Like, dude, I was surrounded by people, who went to school in Berkeley, or, people who went to school at Stanford. And man, it's like, am I really working alongside with these people who went to school for this specific type of job? So, I mean, dude, even till now, like, I still face it.
Yeah, for me, the imposter syndrome was strong on my first job for sure. I even thought
For
about
Salesforce.
Yeah, for Salesforce. I remember during the first 6 months, the thoughts that I was having is like, man, it's taking me longer to do this work.
Yeah.
I think imposter syndrome comes out of an interesting place, at least for me, is that I want to give my best for my team, but I feel like I'm under delivering. But then it's also kind of like, for me, it was maybe I was forgetting that, like, I'm new to this field.
Yeah.
I'm new, like, it's supposed to take me longer, but like, in hindsight, it's easy to talk about it, but in the moment, it's very hard to be rational and logical, because, I don't know, for whatever reason, lack of knowledge or whatever, but I remember thinking during those first 6 months, should I go back to Berkeley? Like, take the easy way out? Because for me, what's easy is what I know I can do.
Yeah.
What's hard is something that I have to work for and something that's not guaranteed. And for me, I thought, if I go to Berkeley, I'll be safe there. College, I'll have that nice social life. And I have a twin brother who went to Berkeley too. We got accepted at the same time. He went because it made sense for his major and stuff like that. He's not in tech. He's in like health. And I thought I'll get to be with my twin brother if I go back to Berkeley. But then I was like, just like, hold in there, Clifford. And fortunately, I'm so glad that I held myself there. And but yeah.
I mean, but like, would you even consider that safe? Because, man, I know some people who went to school for computer science and just fall into a lot of debt. Like, would you consider?
It would have been safe for me because I hate to bring this stuff up, but I got a full ride and everything because I was low income and stuff like that. So for me, it would have been safe. But then I thought to myself during the time I was an engineer, but wouldn't I kind of just be in the same position? Like, okay, like, what are my options? I guess if I'm a social science major, like, I'd have to think hard about what I would need to do after. Because if, like, you're an engineer, you could go into some engineering work. But with, like, political science, sociology, it's like open-ended.
Yeah.
You could go into graduate school or law school or do a bunch of other stuff. So I'd be back in a in a circle for a little bit, and would I be happy with that? And I thought, no, just hold your ground. Like, remember why you did this. It's because you like it. You're giving more power to the situation and feeling scared and giving into it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and about like 7 or 8 months in, actually, into Salesforce, LinkedIn reached out to me. I was like, don't they see that I've only been here 6 months?
Yeah.
But for people who aren't in tech and software engineering, like, that's normal. At least right now in the Bay Area where tech is so hot, lots of companies like to grab other engineers from other companies to build up like a nice workforce for themselves. Like, they like to cross-pollinate engineers from different companies to hopefully make a stronger team. So I was like, why are they reaching out to me like 6 months? Anyways, so this guy reached out to me from LinkedIn, and he was like, do you want to interview? I was like, sure. I went through the process, and I went on site, but I knew that, well, part of me was hopeful, like, maybe I'll get it if they, maybe they might be like, okay, he barely just passed the bar and we like his character. I thought I might get it, but at the same time, I was kind of like, there's a good chance I'm not going to get it because of the way I interviewed. I felt like I did well in my first like 3. But there was one where I was just brain dead by the time I got to that interview.
What question was it?
It was like building a calculator, the front end, and all the logic in JavaScript.
Okay.
And I got stuck there, and I felt like I could have handled and articulated myself better, because you can fail, but then you can fail elegantly.
Yeah.
So I felt like I failed normally, but I could have failed elegantly and made everything else look good, perhaps. So I didn't get the job, long story short. And that kind of put me... Well, I was bummed because LinkedIn was actually one of the companies I wanted to work at for a while. And just sidestepping a little bit, when I joined Europe, me being the curious person I am, I just started doing a bunch of research about the alumni and... like, where are they at now, the alumni of LinkedIn? And I remember I ran into Richard's LinkedIn profile before I started Year Up, and I think that was also one of the things that pushed me to consider Year Up, is like, oh, look at where the graduates are now. Like, they're doing okay, they're doing fine, and a bunch of other people as well. But I was like, and he's an engineer, like, I want to be an engineer too. So...
I remember that. You messaged me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So...
Dang, that was a long time ago.
LinkedIn was something that I wanted to... a company I wanted to work for. I got rejected, and that kind of put me in a reflective mode. And I was like, man, I wish I could have gotten that job. And this was during the same time that at Salesforce, again, lots of stuff happening in my life. It's not like a smooth path for me. But I'm happy that it's not that way. It makes it fun and interesting. But during that same time, about 7 months in, I felt that I needed to move from Salesforce, not because I had a bad manager, not because it was a bad company, but because of like what I was getting out of the current position I was in, on the team that I was in, et cetera, et cetera. For example, I worked on a fully remote team, which is cool because you get to work from home, but as a first job, I think that working remotely can stunt your growth, in my opinion, and just from other people that I've talked to. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. It's what you make of it, but I realized I wasn't growing as much because I wasn't around other engineers. Like, it was just me in my room, Google Hangouts with the team, and I just felt like I could have grown more.
Yeah.
So... after that LinkedIn rejection, I was like, well, if an opportunity comes like that again in a year or so, I'm going to be ready for it. So, time passed, and interestingly, I didn't apply again, but LinkedIn, like 7 months later, reached out to me again. And then I think this second time you were my referral and everything, and I over-prepared, and I made sure I was ready, and boom, a second time I got the job offer at LinkedIn.
And you're there for about a year, right?
A year and like 4 months.
And then after that, you decide to do your own thing, which you're currently in right now.
Yeah.
Damn, that's dope.
I think remote jobs are great depending on what stage of life you're in. Because I noticed like a lot of more experienced people who have just like been engineers maybe 15 or 20 years, like they've seen so much, they have so much experience that they don't need too much like guidance or validation or anything like that. But when you're young, you can maybe feel like you know everything, but to be honest, like when you're young, you still have a lot to learn, and the in-person aspect of things helps a lot. I feel like having experienced remote life first, and then the experience at LinkedIn, just being around the culture of being around other engineers, like seeing this world where it just, you know what I mean? How it's just like, damn, I'm here. Like, other engineers there's all these like big name people at LinkedIn, especially the Ember team.
Yeah.
These people that worked in open source who are just like so phenomenal. Yeah. Being exposed to that life, I feel like now that I'm on my own and I am remote, I feel like I got to see what the best of the best looked like. So I have a reference point to like something I can reference and I can hold myself accountable to. Plus, like just being on your own, you just got to be realistic as hell. Like, there's no messing around, and it's all on
time
you.
Management.
Yeah, there's a time management. But I'm like, if I would have done my own project or on my own stuff right after Salesforce, I think I wouldn't have done very well on my own because I hadn't seen what the best looked like. Leaving LinkedIn with that experience, I felt like I had seen enough where I felt confident in doing my own thing, and I was going to hold myself accountable to a high level to keep growing.
So what are, like, I got this question a lot. Even, random people from the Year Out program hitting me up on LinkedIn saying like, oh, what language should I learn? I mean, that's a cool question, but that's also a loaded question because you also have to take account, like, do you want to do front end? Do you want to do back end? Do you want to do like middle tier? But as far as us, for front end engineers, the thing that you must know is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But then there's another layer because most companies now, we use frameworks like such as Ember, so you don't just do typical HTML. You need to learn handlebars, which is a JavaScript templating system. So as far as for a new web engineer, a new front-end engineer, what do you think are some of the must-knows before entering the field?
Going to front end, like you said, you need the foundation, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Nowadays, though, like, as you already know, like, there are very few things that are just built with those three things. You're using like modern JavaScript, transpilers, Webpack, like these tools that enhance the power of HTML and CSS. So I would say you, of course, need to focus on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then build your way from that. Like, always keep those close, though, because everything else builds on top of that. And then, like you said, like most web apps, they're built with like some library or framework on top of that. That's just a fancy word for like a more sophisticated version of this JavaScript. It's like this nice system that'll help you build things faster, but it's under the hood is built with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So you need to get familiar with the foundation, then learn like a framework. I'll just name a few, like Ember or React and Angular. So learning one of those frameworks like Vue, React, Angular, after you have a strong foundation, I think, will set you up for just positioning yourself well and confidently to pursue different opportunities. Yeah.
I mean, do you think colleges even teach those kind of things? Do you think colleges would actually teach you React or?
No, I would say for front end too, because that's already in and of itself. When we say front end, we've already cut a bunch of the computer science world and just made it a smaller portion. Because like you said, there's front end, back end. When you're focusing on front end, like, first of all, most computer science programs, and I can say this confidently because I've taken a class at Berkeley. I hang out with a lot of Berkeley people, and I'm taking a bunch of computer science classes myself now, not at a university, just like at a professional school where it's for people who are already engineers, and together we're tackling the hard stuff of computer science, but with real world experience already. I think that's different than you just coming in with no experience and then them throwing at you a bunch of theory. Like, you don't know how that's going to be used. But when I came in to learn all these hard things, it made sense to me because I had seen how these theories were put into practice in the real world. For example, did operating systems and computer architecture recently. So I've kind of transitioned from front end to full stack and lower level stuff now, just out of necessity for the stuff that I'm building. But when I was learning about operating systems, I got to see it from a different perspective because of my real world experience. I could like say, oh, they said this about this topic. Well, I had seen it being applied this way in the real world. But if you're a student, it's just like words to you. Yeah. Words.
So I don't think you can't challenge it.
Yeah, you can't challenge it. You take it for what it is. Yeah. I think computer science, for most people, well, the traditional route works for some people, but there's like a caveat with that. It's like, one, are you highly passionate and motivated about that thing? Of course, like being in an environment like that, I think it depends. You have to add it depends. If you're passionate, you've maybe been doing it for a few years, you have some context to apply what the professor is telling you, right? But for most other people, I used to think I missed out on by not doing a computer science degree. I don't think that anymore because of all the exposure that I've had. I think if you learn with purpose, on purpose, with a particular goal, it'll make things more real. So when I'm learning about compilers and all these other things now, I know where it's applied. I can talk about it for hours and geek out, but if I go to a computer science student right now at Berkeley or Stanford, I can confidently say that I can maybe out-talk them about any topic because I have the real-world experience, and then I came back later to refine that knowledge. So that was a long deviation from the question of front end. Learn the
this is supposed to be speed round.
This is learn the fundamentals and then incrementally build. Try to find somebody to work with or talk to as well.
Nice.
Nice.
Any questions?
Well, I guess it's for both of you guys, but what are your opinions on specializing on, front end and back end versus a full stack programmer?
Well, I feel like full stack is different for everybody. For me, full stack, this is not me imposing my views on you, but there's like full stack where you can work on front end and back end. But then I met people at LinkedIn, a guy on my team, who showed me a different level of full stack, understanding things like below, like from C all the way up to the highest level. So there's different levels of full stack. But to be brief, because I like to talk a lot about programming, I think you really need to ask yourself in the beginning of your career, like which one maybe you have more passion for or interest, so then you can build yourself well there. Because once you build yourself well there, you have enough like foundation to be able to compare and contrast this experience here with the new back-end stuff you're learning there. But if you just get thrown everything like a fire hose in the beginning, it might be difficult for some people. But I know people who after the boot camps go into full stack roles, and there's full stack roles that use JavaScript on the front end and then JavaScript on the back end. If you get put into a position like that, I don't feel like there's much big of a jump, but if you get placed from like, JavaScript to Scala.
Dude, Scala is so difficult to learn.
Oh my God. My first 3 months at LinkedIn, I was doing Scala.
I think they moved away from Scala, right?
Yeah.
It's now Java.
Yeah. Everything's pretty much Java on the back end. Yeah. I would say for the front end people, the cool thing that's happening now is that JavaScript is this language that it can be used on the front end and then it can be used on the back end. So once you learn the language well, it's not going to be a big jump to learn how to build your own web server because you're using that same language used on the front end. But a few years ago, like 5 or 6 actually no, probably 10 years ago, when you couldn't use JavaScript, the language you were using on the front end, on the back end, what you had to do is learn JavaScript and then pick up an entirely new language like Java, PHP. Like, that was a big mental overhead. But I would say in the beginning, just try to stay focused is a good plan.
Okay, damn, I got a lot of questions, but I don't want to like.
I'll go ahead.
No,
It'll help
Alright.
people.
Yeah.
All right. This is getting a little more specific, but like, what kind of projects did you work on that you think would make you stand out from other candidates applying to jobs?
Ooh, that's a tough one because I actually haven't done this. When I first started out, when I was first learning web development or front-end engineering, I did super simple stuff like, create a simple web page or create like a game. But as far as now, like when I do interview candidates, I don't typically look at what kind of projects they built. As long as they have a list of projects that they have built is more important. If that makes sense. Like, I don't dive deep on like, oh, what did they create? I kind of look at like how many did they create and were they able to, get it out the door.
That brought back so many memories. And about interviewing at LinkedIn, like, now that I think about it, I never once really, like you said, dug into
What they built.
Like, the recruiter kind of, by the time they get to you, you're expecting that the recruiter did some level of filtering already. So you're like, this person, they must know something already, which is good. When you're interviewing people, sometimes you just only see the resume, you see their past experience, or if they're like new university or college graduates, you'll see the projects, and then you'll see the bullet points with the descriptions for what they did in the project, and then you go based off of that. But I think it's much different when you're at smaller companies for sure. They'll have more time to like look you up on GitHub and stuff like that. Startups do that. Yeah. I know.
So what I do is I just so I may not know what the project that they built, like what it's doing, but I do take a quick glance at their GitHub and see if at least it's semantic markup or semantic JavaScript. If I see that they're writing JavaScript correctly, that's okay for me. But just to see that they're using, the correct syntaxes, that's fine for me already.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with the projects and stuff. Yeah, for me, right out of a boot camp, the project stuff was really important for me. That's the only thing that I had on my resume were the projects, like project, the descriptions and the bullet points. The smaller companies, I know they looked at that stuff. Like the startups I interviewed, they asked me questions about it. Oh, I saw what you did here. But like once you get down to it, the phone interviews, you'll really get to see if that person really knows what they're talking about. And from there, I think it's, it's just from the conversations you can, because we're engineers already, we already kind of know what's okay for this particular role and what's not. Like if you ask somebody interviewing for front end and they don't know maybe, I don't know, what's something that would be an automatic, just like, maybe you're not at the level yet to be
easy.
here.
So when you ask them a JavaScript question and they're like, "Can I use jQuery?" That's like, oh dang! All right, I'm about to sit through this interview for an hour and just shake my head. But something like that.
For sure, I think I've had that experience too, where they're like, "Can I use jQuery?" And that automatic, like you're interviewing for a front end role. What that indicates to me is that you're not fully doing front end, but you want to do front end. And it just kind of puts you're already in that expectation where they're gonna, that everything else from there, if they don't know the vanilla stuff too well, you can't ask them all the other questions too well. Yeah. And at LinkedIn, like places like that, you need to understand the vanilla and the stuff, because you might be the one like creating things, frameworks from scratch yourself, or mini libraries that other people on your team are going to use. You can't just pick everything off the shelf at LinkedIn because everything goes under code review. You can't just pull in like 20 dependencies from NPM. Like, you have to defend yourself. And
really well.
Yeah, so
and you're touching code base that's like hundreds of developers are using.
We all did Team Treehouse. Did you do the tech degree or
no, they didn't. That didn't exist at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess how much from Team Treehouse do you think you should know until you're like job qualified? If you guys remember like the courses or anything.
I'm gonna say that you'll never know. I mean, just from like my experience, like I definitely wasn't job ready, but I put myself out there to try. And I mean, if that's a hard question, because you're never gonna feel like you're gonna be ready,
especially when you're going into your first.
Yeah.
Like, you feel like, like I should learn this. I want to eat everything up, but there's not enough time. You kind of feel like, you just need to put yourself out there so you kind of know where to focus after a little bit.
If you got a front-end tech degree from Team Treehouse, you're going to probably, like after you complete it, you're probably going to feel like, oh, you know what? Before this first interview, let me just learn a little bit about backend just in case they kind of teach me. So you're always going to
learn a little bit about SQL just in case they ask me a database question.
Yeah, so it's like you'll never know. You just have to put yourself out there, and then through the interview process, if you fail, then from that interview you'll know what's missing.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like me and a lot of other people, we get into this, we call it like tutorial purgatory, where like you just keep learning so much stuff, and then you look at different resources, and there's so much online now. It's like, what do I really need to know? When am I prepared? I
feel like that's where the value of like being in a group or following a track or a boot camp, that's where the value is that you filter. So much information is filtered out for you because you have trust that these other people are giving you the right information. And I can feel confident in saying that what I think boot camps like Hack Reactor, and there's different levels of boot camps, but the boot camps like Hack Reactor, they do a good job in filtering out what you really don't need to focus on, perhaps to help you get that first job. And you don't need to know everything. Obviously, for your first job, you have your entire career to pick up things as you go. But when some people are like, I want to do full stack, and they're beginning, for me, I'm always a little hesitant. I know people who've gone directly into full stack, but it just depends because, like I said, the more broad and the more broad something is, the more you feel like you have to learn. Like if you're interviewing for a full stack role, well, guess what? You have to probably study now databases. You have to study just like a bunch of other stuff. But if you're doing front end, at least you can focus here. Or if you're just focusing on back end, at least now you've cut out half of an entire world. And you can always branch out once you're at the job and you get good at it. I'm pretty sure at LinkedIn or most companies, once you get really good or comfortable in your position, your manager is not going to be opposed to you being like, well, can I touch back-end code now? Or can I do a little bit of this now? They're not going to be opposed to it because you're doing what your original job wanted you to do, but you mastered it well. So, yeah.
So you went to Hack Reactor. Knowing what you know now, would you do it all over again? Because I hear a lot of mixed feelings about boot camps and the cost right now. I know the networking and peer programming is like, a big plus, but I just want to hear what your thoughts are.
I would do it again because, again, like I said, you're filtering out so much information out there. So you can focus on being the best that you can be throughout the program. Like every day, it's like going to the gym, having a personal trainer there. They already set out the entire workout for you, everything. And plus, you got to think about it like this. Yes, in theory, you could learn everything on your own. Almost everything in human existence can be Googled now. But there's just so much to filter through. You can get stuck in tutorial purgatory for years.
Yeah.
And there's the value of the network, of the bootcamp. Like, I can say, like, right now, pretty much at every company, there's a Hack Reactor alum. On my floor at the company, there's like 5 Hack Reactor alum. In my building, 1 on my team, 15 that I knew of at the entire company. I know people at Netflix from Hack Reactor, just like everywhere. So the network, the filtering of information, you got to think about it too. Like, you're learning and struggling with other nerds like you. That's going to compound the knowledge. And you could do it on your own, but I will say that you're going to have to filter through all the noise. And it's your like philosophy and perspective. You're going to be putting down, I think it's like 18 grand. You don't have to put it up front. I think I put $2,000 down. I paid the rest off after I got my job. There's some boot camps that you can pay everything after you get your job. So that's another option. But I didn't want to fragment my learning too, because I feel like it's very easy when you're not disciplined. You pick up a little here, and then there's a lot of gaps that you leave open. So I think everything is possible, and you can do it your own way. Just weigh off the trade-offs, you know?
Yeah. It's a lot.
All right, cool. I think we kind of reached our time limit. But I just want to say thank you to both of you guys for stopping by the Being Rich podcast. I need a better outro and a better intro, but I just appreciate you guys coming in here. Is there anything else? I think I think we're good. I think this was very informative, and hopefully people will get a good kick out of it and kind of know what they want to do in order to get into this field. Yeah.
Shameless self-plug.
I was gonna do it. So, Clifford, do you have anything that you wanna tell our listeners? Do you have where can we find you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, gonna give out my social media and stuff, because I am pretty active with just tech and programming and posting stuff on there. If you just Google Clifford Fajardo, my website will show up with all of my links. The whole Clifford Fajardo is a pretty unique name, and I know about SEO. I worked on the SEO team at LinkedIn.
Nice.
You'll find everything about me by just typing in on Google Clifford Fajardo, and you can follow my journey, what it's like. I'm happy to answer questions. You know, I feel like I have this gift. Like, I know how to code, and it's like a fun thing that I love doing. I could do it on the weekend as a hobby thing, and I get paid for it, and I know other people are passionate about tech, and I just want to, kind of help those people out and, see the beauty of programming that I see. So open questions and,
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you. And I'll also put in the description below. And, all right. Thanks, guys.
Cool.